Thank you very much for that. All right, one more panel on the day. No one better to close us out than Laurie Parfitt. Laurie, come on out. Everybody knows Laurie Parfitt. If you don't, you're missing out. Laurie Parfitt leading our next panel on the Buckeye Grow Advantage. Thanks, pal. Take the mic in the chair right there. Let's give it up for Laurie and this final panel of the day.
Hello, everybody. Come on, we are the last panel of the day. I need more energy than that. Yeah, okay. We are your 420 panel. So I am so excited to be here to close out this amazing conference with you. This is my second time in Ohio in the past month. I must love you guys. So I am thrilled to be here. My name is Laurie Parfitt. I'm your fractional CMO in the cannabis space. I have a company called LKP Impact Consulting. We help brands, operators, technology, and ancillary services who don't need or can't afford full-time marketing. We provide it at a size and scale for small to mid-sized business. I hail from Chicago, Illinois, so I am a Midwesterner just like you. Excited to see all the great things happening in this market. And I would love to invite my amazing panel up on the stage. Come join me up here. Come on, give it up for them. Give them some energy. All right, so thank you all for being here. We are excited to close out the day with cultivation. I so rarely get to talk about cultivation. Usually I talk about marketing, manufacturing, branding, analytics. I'm really excited to be talking about this particular topic because I think it's really important, even from a marketing perspective, is one of the things we talk about is having product points of differentiation, which is incredibly difficult with true cultivated flower. And so I am thrilled to have this amazing panel up here with me. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. Swati, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I'm not a cultivator, but I'm Swati Gupta. I'm the founder and CEO of moondustusa. We manufacture custom branded paper cones, tubes, and blunts, and we deliver it to brands and co-packers who work with us. Over to you.
All right, Badi?
I'm Fadi Boumitri. I am the CEO of Ascension Biomedical. We're a small craft cultivation facility out of Oberlin, Ohio. And more recently, the CEO of Rome Dispensary, which is also in the Cleveland area.
Wonderful. Geoff?
Geoff Korff from Galenas. We are a cultivator in Ohio. We also have an operation in Michigan. Been doing this since 2018. I'm also an attorney, and that actually does come in quite handy in the cannabis industry. But very happy to be here today, and thanks for sticking around for us.
Wonderful. David?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Hi, my name is David Haley. I'm the owner and founder of Ancient Roots. We're one of the level 2 cultivators, and I think the only solventless only processor in Ohio, and hopefully soon to be retail. So I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for being here. This is an amazing panel. The level of experience we have here is probably unparalleled here in Ohio. We're going to be covering about 4 topics today. I'm not sure we'll have any time at the end for questions, but we should be covering everything you'd want to know in regards to this topic. So our first topic is defining quality in the Ohio cannabis market. So this market is still really young. It's still developing. The adult use program is still trying to come up. We're seeing things change all the time. So the definitions of what quality means here are also evolving. For some it's potency, for some it's bag appeal, for some it's consistency. So my first question for the panel is, how does your organization define and measure quality? And how do you communicate that to consumers and retailers? David, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as far as quality, it is difficult. And there's, depending on the consumer, like you said, it might be high THC, or somebody that's a little more nuanced might realize, that it's really about terps and other cannabinoids. But I think overall, as an operator, it's really got to be a mindset. And it's got to be a way that you approach cultivation or processing really from seed to sale. There's really no gaps where you're going to put out a quality product if you're not thinking about quality and that being the goal from the get-go, right? So it starts with your genetics, all your processes, and for us, I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs, and he's famously, kind of said that, he believed that you want to focus on the consumer experience and then kind of work back. In his case, work back to the technology. But in my case, or our case, I really do think you have to kind of look at, what the consumer experience is all about. So for me, it's about terpene levels, it's about packaging, how well their experience ultimately is going to be, and to me, inconsistency. And to me, that's really quality. And and it takes a lot to get that word out, because a lot of, as you guys know, a lot of people are shopping on THC, and higher the THC, the better, and that's quality. So you really have to educate not only the patient, but your bud tenders, and really kind of focus on effect more so than potency or anything else. It's like, yes, you can buy a flower for a lot less, but you're going to need a lot more of it in comparison to something that's a little higher quality. So sorry, I kind of went on a little bit.
So I love that answer. So you're really talking about it being a mindset and really having to focus on it. We hear a lot, if you set your mind to it, if you think of it that way, you are likely to produce it that way. And so I love that kind of answer. One of the other things you brought up that I kind of want to dig into is premium. And one of the things we talked about on our intro call was that potency tends to be associated with premium. So the higher the THC, the more premium it is. Whereas a lot of us realize that it's kind of like the big bathtub of pasta versus the small portion super premium ingredients. People think they're getting the value from the big bathtub of pasta, but it's really that's really the more cheap stuff, and the good stuff is really the smaller quality, high portion. And so you talked about premium and trying to communicate that to consumers. Would you sort of dive into that a little bit more and how you've been able to do that effectively?
Well, I mean, I think, again, just the mindset of understanding that premium, again, going back to being, it's a mindset. It's not a category, I think that is critical, from an operational standpoint. Consistency is huge, and, again, going back to the patient experience, I know that Ancient Roots is on the right track based on what I'm hearing from our consumers. And that's really primarily what I'm focusing on is the user experience, is our, and it's a challenge when you're in this situation. It's like, okay, who really is your customer? Is it the patient, is it the consumer, or is it the dispensary? And the answer is ultimately both, right? You need to partner with your dispensaries, and you need to educate the bud tenders. But yeah, I mean, for us, I think consistency is key. Is a really big thing.
How about you, Fadi? What do you think?
So if Ben was here, he's my director of operations and my business partner. I know exactly what he would say, which is consistency in inputs, consistency in systems. That's where you're going to see consistency in quality, right? And that's what was missing in my business for a number of years prior to bringing Ben in to those operations. And that's the difference between hit and miss versus, yes, this is the same each and every single time.
Right, so anybody can produce, but producing the same product every time is where really the rubber meets the road. Geoff, any thoughts from you?
Just one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is genetics. Genetics is literally 60-70% of the game, I think. You can have the best, most expensive operation in the world, but it's not going to make bad genetics into good genetics or bad flower into good flower. And so starting from a standpoint of focusing on genetics as your primary input really, I think, has to be the starting point. And from there on out, everything else is really small but very important little things along the way that have to be focused on. I think having a good quality control system, meaning if you have a bad batch of flour that sneaks in there, that it doesn't end up ultimately in the hands of the end user, or if you have a system to grade flour based on size and various quality metrics, making sure that that is all instituted, as Fadi said, on a consistent basis, throughout your entire process is really what is critical. Anybody can do something well once, but doing it well every single time is really what defines a high-quality product and a high-quality brand.
Agreed. So Swati, how about your perspective? You come at it from like kind of a different angle here, being more on the ancillary accessory side.
Yeah, and I just first want to add one more point. I think quality is defined along with the customers first. So you have to bring their voice in, and that's what really creates how do we define quality for our particular product. And then a lot of you talked about consistency. So consistency is key in, like what we do is packaging, consistency is key, but we use elements of that to define how the brand is defining the quality, and we bring that to life so it can communicate back to your customers that this is the quality that you asked for, and we've co-created, and we're delivering it every time consistently, like each one of you talk.
I love that answer. So it's really about consistency and then making sure that you can bring it to life and you can communicate it to your customers. All right, that actually segues nicely into topic number 2, which is consistency. And so it's building consumer and retailer trust through consistency. So trust is the foundation of loyalty, especially in a new market. And as operators, the challenge is not just growing a great product, but doing it every single time. I love what you said. Anybody can do it once, it's doing it over and over and over again. You know, when you go to McDonald's, whether you go in California or New York or anywhere else, it's the same experience every single time. And not that we want to be McDonald's, but we want to have that consistency. And so, Fadi, what processes or quality control measures do you use to ensure consistency from batch to batch?
So number one and most important is the right people, because the right people will drive that for you. If you have the wrong person in that seat, even if they want to do it properly, they may not be able to, or even worse, they may not be as interested in doing it as you need them to be. So number one is having the right person driving that consistency, and then number two is what I said earlier, which is making sure your inputs and making sure your systems are easy, they're repeatable, and they're going to, the way we like to think about it at our facility is every plant has a maximum genetic potential. Your job is to keep it as close to the maximum genetic potential as possible, and that's what we do on a consistent basis. First, you learn what the genetic potential is by learning the plant. After a few rounds, you find that genetic potential, and you try to live as close to that genetic maximum potential as you possibly can.
I really like that answer. Again, what I keep hearing from everybody up here is it's the people. And that's what I love to hear, because this is an industry made of people. And you know, we can all say that it's about the plant, and it definitely is, but it's really the people who bring it to life. So I love that. And then taking the genetics and using them to their highest potential. Can you dig into that a little bit more? How do you approach that?
So there's a very smart, much smarter than I am, grower that has allowed us to use some of his genetics here in Ohio, and he explains it as, again, every plant has a maximum genetic potential. You have to achieve that maximum genetic potential through the combination of what you're feeding it, how often you're feeding it, what your environment looks like. One of the ways that we failed as a company early on is our rooms were not designed well enough to keep the environment for those plants as well as we would have liked. So we were seeing dips in humidity, spikes in humidity, dips in temperature, spikes in temperature. And until I brought in the right team to really flatline that and get it to a place where those same rooms could do exponentially better, be an exponentially better environment for the same plants, same genetics that we had been using, all of a sudden you start to see plant health increase as opposed to what most people think of, which is genetic drift, and that plant is slowly going to get worse a little bit with every round, right? It was exactly the opposite, where these plants were coming up with, and it's very, it's hard because the only thing we have to look at in Ohio is numbers, right? Our numbers are THC numbers, terpene numbers. With the way that the structure of Ohio built out so that we are not allowed to R&D, we're not allowed to test, we don't know until it's hit a dispensary whether it's good or not. And we have to rely very heavily on the feedback from customers to really make that determination.
That's a very interesting perspective, that the standards aren't there, so basically, sometimes you're almost shooting in the dark. One of the things I like that you talked about is that you made some mistakes early on, and you took that information and you said, okay, how do we make this better? And with that, you kind of drove your business forward. You got the right people, the right processes in place, so you could actually take your business to the next level. I think it really says a lot about a company who can say, hey, I didn't do it right the first time. A lot of companies really struggle with that. They struggle with being able to say, I messed up. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be. But I love the fact that you took that information, you learned from it, and what I really heard from you is it really takes an iteration over time. It doesn't just happen with the first batch. You don't just have like one great grow and then you're done. It's really a build-up process.
I was just talking to some of the biggest lenders in the cannabis space, and he was explaining to me that they consistently see with every company that they go into that every single round there's a little bit better yield. Every single round. The reason for that is as you learn each one of these genetics, each one of these plants, every one of them is a little bit different, and you either A, change the genetics out to find something that fits into your system, or you B, have genetics that already work in your system and just get a little bit better with them every round if you're doing things well.
I like that perspective. So what about transparency? So you don't really have the same testing data, the storytelling and on-site engagement. What does that really play in building trust? Anybody on the panel want to approach that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So our process, we're an organic grow, we're soil-based, we do the living soil thing to the extent that you're familiar with it. And it's a very, very different process from really beginning to end relative to hydroponic systems. Not to say one is better than the other, but it's just different. And so the quality control is, in our opinion, kind of, I would say, dramatically more challenging because we've got a lot of inputs that a lot of producers or cultivators are just not dealing with. And so as a result of having kind of a different starting point, the amount of control that has to happen is very significant, and the amount of inputs that have to be controlled for in a soil-based and organic operation is dramatic. And so we're constantly trying to drive the process through to the end user. To the point about transparency, we want our consumers to view our process as a sign of quality. And it's, I think, it's fashionable to be organic. Living soil is kind of a buzzword, but we have an investment in what we're doing from kind of a philosophical standpoint, and we try very hard to make it that resonate with our consumers such that they understand that we care quite a lot about the fact that we're running an organic operation, and we're willing to share pretty much everything that we do with them, from the type of soil that we use to the inputs. We've got a certification called Certified Kind, which is kind of a USDA organic analog for the cannabis industry, for the purpose of being really transparent on process, so that we earn the trust of the consumer and they believe that what we're telling them from our quality story is real because we've invested in the process in order to make it happen.
So how do you communicate that to them? How do you make sure consumers really understand that? Because when it comes to cultivated product, versus like manufactured gummies and things like that, a lot of consumers don't necessarily understand what makes really great flower. It tends to be commoditized. So how do you communicate that, and what type of education do you provide from an input perspective to make sure that consumers really do understand what they're getting and why they should be buying it?
It's a lot of repetition. I mean, it's taking some very complicated soil science and kind of breaking it down into little pieces that we hope are somewhat more digestible by the general public. Now, we don't get overly technical in any of the things that we put out there, but we're trying to convey kind of the sense that this is a very highly cultivated, to use a pun, I guess, process that we've put a lot of intention into. And so we'll throw maybe one or two technical pieces of information out there, but our goal is not to confuse the consumer. It's really just to signal to them that we've got a lot of intention in what we're doing, and then it's just telling the story over and over and over. You've got to tell the same story a lot of times in order for people to actually understand that this is what you're about.
I like that. Yeah, Patty?
So for us, one of the things that we do specifically is we bring in bud tender tours. I apologize. Apparently, I partied way too hard last night. I have no idea what happened there.
You're in good company.
We bring in bud tender tours, right? We ask the bud tenders at various facilities anytime they want to. They're more than welcome to come out, tour the facility. Unanimously, what they come out saying is, number one, cleaner than I ever expected it to be. Number two is the smells in the vault are just so wild. But until you walk them through that process, until they see how complicated it is, especially a brand new bud tender, they don't really grasp that, but once they have seen it, they can evangelize that for you.
I love that. Being able to access the bud tender. So cannabis is one of those industries where consumers don't make their own decisions. All decisions are really made by that bud tender in front of you. Most consumers actually don't know enough about the product. I mean, some of the ones who've been utilizing it for a while definitely do, but especially as a market becomes adult use, you're bringing a lot of new consumers in. And so educating that bud tender is your frontline worker. Those consumers are going to buy whatever that bud tender says they like on any given day. So being able to engage and inspire that bud tender is key to success. David, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that's one of the more challenging things, in this industry in general is advertising and education. And there are certain platforms out there that we utilize, like Seed Talent, which is a third party that will help you get to the bud tenders to educate on various things. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of the more successful things that I've had is bringing bud tenders into the facility as well. And I need to pull the trigger on it, but I've been talking about, because we're 100% solventless, and which is still kind of a specialized thing in the industry. I mean, out of all the product categories, it's one of the newer ones that not everyone is doing. And so what I would like to do is bring at least 2 bud tenders from every dispensary that we're in and have them spend a day with my team and learn the process inside and out. And then that way each dispensary at least has 2 hash heads that can go on and teach the other bud tenders as well.
So I like that response because it's really about how do you put out those points of product differentiation. So you're solventless, that is a point of differentiation. And one of the things we talk about in cannabis, as well as any other mature industry, is that it can't just be a marketing point of differentiation. You just don't want to say you have a pretty color on a package or a nice logo. What's really important is that there's something unique about your product so that the consumer knows why they're buying that. And I love the fact that you've been able to pull out an actual product point of differentiation that you're communicating to bud tenders and consumers. And one of the things I want to definitely touch on there is the marketing aspect that you talked about, because I have heard all day about how marketing is really rough in this state, and truthfully, it is rough in every state that cannabis operates in. The marketing rules change on a daily basis. You don't always know what you can do. You can't always work with the commission. And so Swati, you work kind of on the ancillary side with packaging, with cones, with things like that. Communicating a message there, how impactful has that been for your customers?
I think so the way we work is we would always ask our clients about the why first, about why they're doing it, so that we can understand where the story is coming from. And that kind of helps us drive the elements of the packaging. So for example, if they are going for a more like a whole sky space vibe, we would recommend some sort of those elements in the packaging that can communicate to a visual customer right away. And then there are tactile elements to that as well. So that kind of translates the why and the brand story into the packaging. And I know that's been really challenging to get anything passed in Ohio. That's a big, big challenge. Like you said, Fadi, that it's on the shelf, like you wouldn't know what's gonna work, what can actually go off here. So But then you still have to try and work on it. Like, that's the best I can say.
Right. So it's all about, thinking about how do you make it work. And in every state, regardless of where you are, this is definitely an issue. So that brings me to topic number 3, which is adapting to shifting regulations without losing your focus on quality. So adult use is here. We see constant adjustments to labeling and compliance and marketing. So how do you evolve while protecting what makes your product great? Geoff, can you start us out with that one?
I think you have to silo what you're doing from a product and quality standpoint from what you're doing from a compliance standpoint. Sometimes that's impossible, meaning if you're making a product that's not authorized by your regulator yet, obviously you can't do that. But we're all fundamentally in the same business that starts with plants and then goes from there with the various products that are made. And if you've got a quality control system in place and a production system in place that is consistently yielding good results for you and yielding high quality product, the compliance component of it kind of has to be made to fit within what's already working for you. And so one big change that has happened relatively recently in Ohio is that our testing metrics have changed, and the way that our labs go about collecting flower and the state of the flower that has to be in from a moisture content standpoint is different now. And so as a result, over the last couple of months, all of our potencies in the state of Ohio have come down, and it's confused all of our consumers to a pretty significant extent. How do you adjust to that? Well, you have to ultimately tell the story and explain what's going on, but you also probably should go out and find some higher potency genetics if ultimately what one of your elements of your pitch is that you're going to have a high potency product portfolio. And so that is something that there's no avoiding it. You just kind of have to adjust and deal with the fact that the regs have changed and now suddenly made products that you thought were good performers not so attractive because they're only testing at 19% THC, and that's just not commercially viable in the eyes of most consumers, even though it's the same product that they've been getting for the last 5 years. You just have to do it. So there are some ways in which you can keep the quality separate from what you're dealing with on the compliance side, but sometimes it's just adapting. And in a state like Ohio, and not even a state like Ohio, I think this whole industry in general is one in which the fact that you're going to have to change what you're doing in order to deal with an ever-changing regulatory landscape is just a reality that everyone is kind of adjusted to.
I couldn't agree with you more. Every state, as they evolve, they change things. One of the questions I have in regards to this, and we've been talking about this a lot yesterday and today, is how do you work with regulators to kind of help them understand what you're doing, why you're doing that, and how you can help them put together regulations that actually make sense. One of the things we find in this space is that a lot of regulators, they don't necessarily know what they don't know. And we have to educate them too, because they're new to this as well. So how do you approach that with regulators to partner with them to see if you can kind of come to an agreement about how things should work together? Go ahead.
I mean, obviously conversation is going to be the most important element, communicating with them, explaining things to them. A lot of times that doesn't work, if I'm being honest, right? Like, we've had so many conversations that we feel like end up falling on deaf ears. But if you don't have those conversations, then the answer is nothing. You can't do anything, right? So you have to have those conversations. I actually, whether you're talking about regulators or whether you're talking about legislators, I just, at this event got a chance to speak with a couple of our legislators in Ohio and explain how I feel certain things should move forward. And one of the ideas is something that he said he hasn't heard yet, but thought it might be interesting. And then a few minutes later, talking to a regulator and seeing, can this pass muster from the regulator side, and learning what is everybody has hurdles in their mind about why they can't do X, Y, or Z. If you don't have the conversation with them directly, you never find out what those true hurdles are, and then you can't overcome those hurdles. So you have to start with that basic communication of, hey, why wouldn't you do this? Why have you ever thought about this? Any thought into this? And when they come back to you with this response, which politicians are really good at coming back to you with a response, then you have to be prepared for, whatever it is that they said. How do you respond to that? And that's what I think he was a little bit taken aback by, is I actually had a response, because the first question always has to be a setup for what they're going to say in order to get to what you want them to hear from you. Because they're always going to be defense up first, then they get to speak, and that's when you get to actually have a conversation.
I like that answer. Geoff?
Well, and to add to that, so much of this industry is just, it's purely political, meaning that you can have something that will make complete sense for the industry and for the regulatory structure in place and for consumers, but it just might not be politically viable for reasons. And so if you don't talk to the regulators and you don't talk to the legislators, you don't get to the point of understanding where the politics makes it impossible. So part of it is really just finding out what is possible and what is not possible, and then working within that kind of construct on the things that are possible, because there's no point spinning your wheels on things that are just politically totally untenable.
Right, so it's picking and choosing your battles is really what I'm hearing. Any thoughts from you, David?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but like Vada was saying, I mean, you just have to communicate the best that you can. And yeah, more often than not, it's going to fall on deaf ears. But, I like to think that some things, get through. And it's, it's just the squeaky wheel gets oiled kind of thing, right? It's, and I can appreciate the difficulty with writing legislation and rules and, without it playing out yet and assuming that, you're going to get everything right. And because that's never going to happen. So with that, I mean, I think in some cases, they have been willing to kind of listen and get some feedback on, what might make the most sense, because, what is going on now is like impossible. I mean, one of the things was back in the day, it would take 4 to 6 weeks to hire somebody new. So you could get, 1, 2 people, whatever, and you're trying to maintain your business, and you can't bring another person in there for 2 months, by the time you interview people. And I told, my inspector at the time, like, hey, can't we just sign an attestation, to say that, we've done the background check, we're attesting that this person is qualified, and if we're wrong, then fine us or do whatever you want. And that's kind of how they operate now. Now, I'm not saying I was the one that changed that rule, but maybe he did say something to them and be like, hey, these guys you can't function when you can't hire somebody for 2 months. Like, I mean, it's just.
Right, so some of these rules don't always make sense. They sound good in theory, but then in practice, they don't really work. So it's really about working with the regulators, sitting down with them, trying to get them to understand where the compromise can actually happen, and then hope that they'll work with you to implement it. So we are on to our final topic, which is standing out through brand experience. So this is beyond the product. And so like Elise was saying, cultivated product, unless it's like manufactured into gummies or vape pens or things like that, it's very hard to truly differentiate yourself. And so we've talked about genetics being important, terpenes being important, consistency being important, but then there's also the how do you communicate that out to consumers? And some of that is in packaging, some of that is in branding. And so Swati, have you experimented, with, tactile or visual elements that keep consumers active and engaged with a brand?
I think I want to start by an experience share here. I was in Ohio last month, and then for an event, and then at the after party, of course, there's product floating around. I was like, great, let's try some product in Ohio. And we're sitting a bunch of us, we're smoking a joint, and I was like, this is really good. And then I'm like, who is it from? And I'm like, I don't know. Because it's a joint, it has nothing on it. And sometimes it would have like a paper brand on it. And the word of mouth is just lost there. And this is just not happening to me. Can I have a show of hands if you've smoked a good product and you don't know which brand it is? That's consumer experience data right here, right? I would say from a packaging perspective, and I make the cones, I would say this is the most inexpensive single-digit cent you can spend on marketing. Brand your pre-rolls, start right. right? And it's not only you're branding your pre-roll, just think about it. When you smoke a good joint, you think, this is good flower. So when you want to roll your own, you would say, okay, I want to get a flower from this brand. So you're double dipping on that. So it goes far. So that's what I'm saying. That's where packaging really brings your why, your story, puts it in hand of the customer right there. So since Ohio is opening up to pre-rolls, all the brands are thinking about it, I would say really do think about it. Then with that, we are in very challenging times right now. Times are very uncertain, economics is shifting. And that's, again, it's really important to know what are you looking for as a brand in that? What kind of quality of product, packaging you're looking for, what kind of turnaround time you're looking for, what kind of quantities you're looking for, because in Ohio, you don't want to be locked in with big quantities and something does not pass by DCC. Do not compromise on those things when we are talking to your partners for packaging. Know all of those items and then go in asking for that. So when times are tough, do not dilly-dally on these times. That's when you stick to your guns, because that you go back to your why and stick to it. That's what I would say.
Right, so I love that, stick to your why, and that branding can be communicated in a very inexpensive way. So one of the things you brought up is pre-rolls are new to the Ohio market, and they're growing incredibly fast. Pre-rolls and vape pens are the two fastest growing categories in the country. And so the fact that pre-rolls have entered Ohio is huge. And there's a lot of ways to start branding those pre-rolls, and it doesn't have to be done expensively. So the one thing I didn't hear you really talk about, you talked about quality, you talked about branding, but cost. There's an inexpensive way to make sure that you can brand that product. So like you said, you're not at a party and people are like, what is that flower I smoked? I don't know what that is. Now you have a way of making sure they identify what that is. So from a cost perspective, can you talk a little bit about how you see that playing out for brands going forward?
I mean, like I said, it's a single-digit cent. And think about how that translates into when somebody is having that experience, putting a name to it. That goes back to the first question of defining quality. That defines your quality. Your brand becomes your quality. That's how it rolls in. It's just a couple of cents. I think everybody should really just, pre-rolls should think about it. Pre-roll brands should think about it.
David?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. You know, and from a business perspective, you know, I really kind of always looked at packaging as marketing, straight up, especially with 280E. You know, I obviously, you know, unless you're getting kind of aggressive with with how you're categorizing things, packaging, you know, clearly could be written off as COGS. And so, I've always looked at it, especially in this industry, as you have to go all in on your packaging. It's the one opportunity to really make an impression. Now, obviously, what's in the jar, what's in the vape, at the end of the day, is going to sell it. But that's your opportunity to have, you know, your website, your, you know, all the information that you ultimately want to get to the consumer, so that they go check your website out or whatever the case is. It's everything, and it comes down to the consumer experience. If it's really difficult to get the product because you can't get the child-resistant part of it out, or whatever the case might be. I mean, all of that plays, you know, a huge difference in that consumer's experience with your product. And I would even say, you know, from a psychological standpoint, even if your product inside is great, if your session starts off in a bad way, it's just, it tends to go bad the rest of the way. So I think packaging is huge. Absolutely.
Agreed. So we are just about out of time, which we got every topic covered, so this is pretty amazing. So what I heard from this panel today is it's really, one, about the people. Make sure you have the right people in place and you're doing the right things. Two, it's consistency. Be consistent in everything that you do. It's important to know that it's not just doing it once, you have to do it consistently over time. Three, have differentiation to your product, really be able to show why a consumer should be buying your product versus the next product out there. And 4, make sure you're packaging it properly so consumers can identify your product with a brand so they know what to buy when they go into the dispensary. So with that, thank you all so much. Thank you to our amazing panel. Give it up for them.
Great job, Laurie. Great job, panel. Thank you so much. Let's give them one more round of applause. Closing us out strong. Thank you as always, my friend. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll see you at the next one. Oh, what a handshake. What a handshake. Thank you, thank you. Guys, that does it for us. The first ever Ignited Ohio Valley Market Spotlight. We will be back. I thought this was a great event. I hope you did too. We will follow up with a survey. We want to know your thoughts. We want to know what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can do better moving forward. We're in D.C. 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today. We just confirmed, I don't know if I can announce it yet. We just confirmed a senior congressional leader from the House of Representatives to speak in D.C. So that announcement should come out tomorrow in a press release. I'll tease you with it now, but I'll say that it's shaping up to be a hell of agenda. So if you can make it to D.C. a couple weeks from now, you probably should, right? It'll be an impactful event for sure. I'm sure many of you are closing up your event season, right? So I wish you well. If you need follow-up help after this, please reach out to us. We will be glad to help you. We want to make sure you connect with who you need to connect with here and elsewhere, obviously. The next one, the next big one is in Chicago, June 14th through 16th. Again, today only with that QR code, you get that for like $200. Right, if you try to buy it on site, it's going to be over $1,000, right, for that ticket. So please take advantage of that if you can. Any other questions, comments, concerns? It's patrick@ignited.com, elliot@ignited.com. We want to help all of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Downstairs is a cocktail reception right now for the next hour on the second floor, one floor down. Go enjoy that reception, and thanks again. Goodbye.
Inhambane, meu lugar, a matapa e a minha comida, sorriso de uma menina, derrama aí o meu paraíso, seu sabor sorrine, eu amo, é a boa avenida, aqui, meu Moçambique, sinto saudade.